All right, so in this video, we're going to go through and clean up those various to-do, fix this later lines. So this will also include dealing with these two warnings that we have over here in Unity regarding these variables that are assigned but never used. So if you jump back over to Visual Studio, we have to-dos in several different spots. So in order to see them all, we're going to use that task list feature we talked about earlier. So view task list, and then now that it's here, I'm going to go ahead and pin it. I'm going to start from the top and work my way down towards the bottom. So the first item is this disable once verified. Well, actually, they're already disabled, so I don't really need to deal with this in any way. I'm going to leave this here. If you want to delete these 3 lines, be my guest. I use these for lectures and that kind of stuff, so I'm just going to leave them right here. But the point is, these 3 lines, especially these last 2, should not exist. They were only here for testing purposes. So the next item in this sequence, this first fix this later, if we go to it, you'll see that this is where the ball hits something and it finds out that it is indeed a brick, and now it says, well, b.hit taken. So the first thing we need to do is get rid of this to do, so it's no longer listing in our document area or in our task list. So you can triple click that line to highlight the whole thing, or just highlight the whole thing manually, and then delete. And now uncomment the b.hit taken. So get rid of those first 2 comment lines. Okay, so now because the code exists, this is going to no longer generate an error like we saw earlier. Okay, so moving on to the next fix this later. This is at the bottom of ball where we have our on trigger enter and we've hit the floor. So we need to get rid of the to do, triple click, delete, and now the game manager instance lose does exist, so we can enable that code. And now our next fix this later is over here in brick, where we have our brick counting up for every one that we start, and when we count it up, we then show that update. So we can get rid of the comment and uncomment the line of code. And now let's move on to the next fix me this later. And this is where we are destroying the brick. We decrement it so we can get rid of the to do fix this later and uncomment the show brick count. The next fix this later is over in brick down here at the bottom when we were doing our if the count is less than or equal to 0 and we are not quitting, then go ahead and win. So we can get rid of the comment, the to do fix this later, and we can uncomment win, the call to the game manager. And then moving on to the next fix this later, we can get rid of that fix this later and uncomment the modify and show score with points on collision. And the next fix this later is going to be that very next line, so we can get rid of the fix this later and enable or uncomment. Enable this line of code, uncomment the line of code for modify and show score using points on destroy. So collision outside, if we've hit it enough times, we then get those final points for destroying it. And then the final to do is another one of our debugging kind of blobs of code. In this case, it was disable once verified. Did we actually press the escape key, go to the end scene? Yes, everything was fine. So we disabled the entire start method. So with that, you can go ahead and save all of those files, and we can now unpin the task list. And from this point, we go into the kind of testing phase, making sure that the actual project is running the way we expect it to. This is the scenario where all the gameplay should be functional. So if we start playing, what you should see is we go into play. The ball touched the paddle. That's why we got that warning down there at the bottom. And if we left, right, A, D, then the paddle moves. If we press the space bar, the ball bounces around the scene. Score is currently 0. Bricks was 1. And for a split second there, you might have noticed it did go down to 0. And here we see our green text, and it says, you win, final score, 2. Looks good so far. So if we go back to play again, you'll notice our score now says 2, and our bricks now says 1, or still says 1. And so we can go into the, while we're playing, we can go into the floor and enable it as a trigger. This is going to be temporary. If I stop playing, this will be undone. This is only for testing purposes. So now if I move the ball, or move the paddle so that the ball hopefully doesn't hit the brick, if it hits the floor, we go to the end scene with you lose. So that all appears to be correct. And if I wanted to, I can go back over here to my level 1, and let's grab this brick and just duplicate it and move it over to the side. And just to test it out, again, I already have a game manager here, so I can just run this real quick. My bricks here should now say 2, which it does. So that tells me that the system is indeed counting correctly when it has multiple bricks out there in the scene. So I just got rid of that brick and saved that file. So now what you'd want to do is go back, double check the rubric, double check the instructions, make sure that everything that we have here is the same as what you have there on your end. Make sure that your score updates up here, the bricks updates, the final screens win or lose shows up correctly, your brick gets destroyed based on the proper number of hits, has the proper number of points when you hit it and destroy it, and that your paddle moves back and forth and the ball follows the paddle, and that the floor is indeed lava. Now, in order to address these kinds of issues where you want to make a bunch of other levels, there are a couple of different ways you could approach this. Grab your level 1 and duplicate it. Unity will automatically create you a level 2, and so on, and all you have to do is add that to the Control-Shift-B or File Build Settings, add it to the build settings up here, and as long as the order is correct, start, level 1, level 2, end, the system will automatically send you there as long as you win. Now, remember that you might need to rebake your lighting, and again, to do that, you can go up to Window, Rendering, Lighting Settings, and you'd have to uncheck Auto Generate and check Generate Lighting. Then Unity takes a second to calculate all the stuff it needs to, and then your scene is properly lit. Now, if you want multiple bricks, if you are aiming to create additional individual bricks out there, you would want to take maybe this prefab here, duplicate it, rename them so it's like green brick, red brick, and so on, and then the material that they use right over here, you'd want to duplicate that green brick material, red brick, so on, and slot them in unique ways. The rubric has a very specific item on it that says if you want extra points for extra levels, then a brick, if we go down here to the bottom, number 1, it would be level 2, 3, and 4, because we just gave you level 1 here in class, so that really doesn't count towards the overall score. But if you want those extra 5 points per level, each one has to have multiple bricks out there. Change the pattern up and make them all unique from each other. In addition, the points on collision, points on destroy, and max hits do need to change. And that could be as simple as create another brick and change these all to 2s. Create another brick, change these all to 3s, and so on per level, so that each level has its own unique set of bricks, and that'll sort you out when it comes to the rubric. But essentially, now that you've got all your bits and pieces all play tested, the game seems to run really well. There don't seem to be any issues, no warnings, no official warnings. This is more informational. Now you can go ahead and test your game. So step 4 over in the documentation has a list of things that you would basically walk through and verify. So real quick, if we go through it here, realize because we have extra items and whatnot. So the idea is we want to make sure that all the bits and pieces necessary to construct this game are indeed there. So the first thing you want to do is go back to your code, double check that everything is saved. If your files aren't saved, Unity might see something stale and you wouldn't get those updates, and that might have been a fix, that might have been a bug. So the second thing is to make sure that all of your assets in terms of your scenes are also saved. So you should be able to close down the editor, bring it back, and not be prompted with saving in the future. Now, in order to get your content out for actual testing, it's important to note that Unity's export system will filter based on where you're currently selecting. So if I happen to have, scripts highlighted, and I go up to Assets, Export Package, you'll notice my export package now only shows scripts. We can't do anything with these. There's no real gradable information. I don't have your scenes, I don't have your materials, your prefabs, anything. So got to make sure that you're selecting all the stuff. And this is why it was important to make that named root level folder. If you, for whatever reason, didn't, then your best bet is to just select assets. If you're in 2-column mode, your best bet is to either select assets up here. Let's see here. Actually, in 2-column mode, you should select assets here. You're forced to select something. In 1-column mode, you can actually deselect stuff. You can't do that in 2-column mode. You have to have something selected. But over here, if you have something selected, you can always Control-click and it deselects. But you can always go up here to the Assets root folder or your named folder, whichever one you see fit. And with it selected, if you try the same thing, Assets, Export Package, now we see that it's all the materials, all the prefabs, the scenes, the lighting information for the scenes, the scripts, and then Arkanoid layout. We can kind of ignore that one. But then you would hit Export. And here, when you go to export, Unity just assumes, oh, you want it in the same spot you had it earlier. So in your named project scenes. Doing this will absolutely clutter your project. You'll start having all these extra files in here should you need to export several times, and it gets really busy, really disorganized. So what you want to do is put it somewhere that's kind of temporary, that you know where it's at. So in my case, I choose to put it on the desktop. And what I'm going to do is name it the same as my named folder over here. Last name, first name, underscore, week 3 project. And when you hit save, Unity, and also, by the way, notice right here, Unity package. Remember earlier when we were saving scenes and it just said .unity? These are two different things. They happen to use the same icon, but just something to watch out for. These are scenes, .unity. What we're about to make is a package, .unity package. This is like a zip of all the content. So then when you click save, Unity bundles all your information up, throws it onto the desktop, and it opens an Explorer window. This right here might be a good Gold Master submission candidate, but it might also contain some bugs that have possibly been overlooked over here in your development environment. So what I'm going to do is minimize this Unity and minimize this this sequence of windows. And over here, this Unity package is the one that I want to test. So what I'm going to do is jump over to my Unity launcher, And actually, just before I do that, I'm going to go back over to my main Unity and make sure that main layout and Arkanoid are selected as my like resolution and my layout. So that's all good. And now over here in my launcher, I'm going to create a new project, and this is going to be named Week 3 Test. Now, just like my asset package over here, I'm going to put this on my desktop. Try to keep the same settings as before, same version of Unity, 3D, no analytics, no packages, and create. Now, Unity is going to take a minute to generate that specific item, but since we're already sorted out with our asset package over here, we can basically just wait a few more seconds, and once it finishes, then we'll be able to, just like we did when we very first started, we want to clean out the project. It's nice that Unity gave us some files, some assets and some folder structures and that kind of stuff, but our files will actually conflict with those, so we need to purge all the information that's there by default. And that'll allow our tests to be that much more free of outside interference, basically. So I'm going to continue to wait for this. Potentially speed up the video depending on how long it takes. Okay, so in this case, for whatever reason, Unity decided to stick around in the default layout. So right off the bat, this view is currently set to Arkanoid layout. Okay, or rather Arkanoid 896 by 1024. So far, so good. I'm going to change this layout back to my main layout that I normally use, and it resets it. So let's go ahead and change it back. Now, since Unity provides us this sample scene and this sample scene in a scenes folder, I'm going to Control-N to unload the scene. And I'm going to take this high-level object, basically the item just underneath the asset's root, and just delete it. Now, remember I said the build settings weren't carried over, so Control-Shift-B, and we get the same amount of blank nothing, as well as the aspect ratio here, not aspect ratio, the resolution for standalone is back to 1024 by 768. So that's why you got to watch that stuff. But now the Arkanoid test project, the Week 3 test project over here on my desktop, that's what I want to bring into Unity. So if I jump back over to Unity, and again, double check, make sure that you're in the right project. You can look at its name up here, Week 3 Test versus PGF1 Week 3 Project. So make doubly sure you're in the correct project. Now over here in the test, we're going to Control-O to open up either a scene or a file or whatever, and we go out to the desktop and find our Unity package. Double click it, and we'll get an import dialog saying that everything you're about to import is new. If anything along here said anything other than new, you potentially have a problem. You might have some kind of file that's already there from a previous test and it's trying to refresh, and that could end up messing with things. So looking through the list, we have our materials, our prefabs, the 3 scenes, the 1 scene's additional information from baking, and then these bunch of scripts and then the image. So now we can click import. And it's going to bring all the content into this assets folder. And then we can go down here and just kind of, number one, when it imported everything, it also compiled. So we're also watching for any extra warnings over there in the console window. But now, if you click on each one of these and just double check their contents, everything appears to be correct on a number of fronts. So we want to grab all 3 of these scenes, start, level 1, and end, and drag and drop them into our scenes in build. And you can also use Control-Click up there to move stuff around. But now that everything is good, scene, or sorry, start, level 1, end, we can close that dialog and go over to start. And now you can maximize on play to give us a little real estate and press play. So at this point, you would want to walk through every option that you constructed. Make doubly sure that the quit button works. Quit button just worked. Play, launch the ball, and up, it bounced off the floor, so that's an error. That would actually cost me points if I was trying to submit this for a final build. So in order to fix this, what I want to do is unload the current project, unload the current scene, so it's Control-N to get rid of that, and then pick this root level name here and delete it. Just get rid of it. Because now I know this project has a problem, I have to go and fix it. So go back over to your development environment. And we said earlier that the play area needed to have its floor changed. So I'm currently inside Start. If you look at the play area here, it's still unchecked. So you can do this from pretty much anywhere as long as you have that prefab. So I'm back in Start. I'm going to go into the play area. So I can either double click it or click Open Prefab. And now you're inside that prefab right there. So I'm going to change the floor to be Trigger. And it automatically saves because Unity's got a button. Let's see, where did it go? Right here, Auto Save. It will automatically save any kind of changes like that. So now if I back out of there and go into, let's say, back to level 1, and take a look at the floor again, hey, it's a trigger. So now if I play tested and the ball hits the floor, I lose correctly. So at this point, I can run that test one more time, double check that my code is all saved, that everything about this level and this level and everything is saved. Control-Shift-B to verify we have everything. Okay, so far so good. So now, assets, then assets over here, export package, materials, prefabs, levels, the scenes, and then our actual scripts, and export. In this case, I want to overwrite the version that's on my desktop, so we can just double click that and say, yep, overwrite it. And now this guy should be good to import again over here in our test environment. So if I Control-O, desktop, that old version, make sure that everything over here says new. If it does not, you didn't clean everything out. So double check that kind of stuff. And now we bring that all back in. And now that it's here in this level, we can take a look at the player settings, and sometimes it will persist the information from before, so it looks like it kept it around. Now, if we go into Start and Play, moving the cursor, spacebar, and you lose. Yay! All right. So firing it up into the scene. Oh, lost again. We can let it hit that brick, and boom, 2 points. So score of 2, 1 brick, and it seemed to work out. So score of 4, and quit. So since everything here seemed to function correctly that time, then I know that the version that's on my desktop, I can say with a good amount of confidence that it is a good submission candidate. And in order to get this up to FSO, you need to right-click on it, go down to Send To, and the second item, Zipped Compressed Folder. And by doing that, you'll create a folder with the exact same name, but a different file extension. This is what you submit to FSO, and then we will grade it and go from there. So if you have any questions, comments, concerns on any of that stuff, you can always reach out to your instructor, double check the rubric, the instructions, etc., etc. But other than that, I believe that is everything I needed to cover for this particular project, and thank you for your time.